The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep, open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shayn, and in today's episode, we're going to be diving into something that's definitely been in the forefront of the Fortean research community for a while, but fascinating all the same because there's always new ones that are popping up. But we're going to be diving into the Mandela effect today with a third-time returning researcher slash guest slash friend of the show who's been around since the beginning, but every single time he comes on, he brings the heat. He really does his research into all this information, and no different on this one. I think you guys are definitely going to enjoy it. But before we get into this episode today, I have something very, very cool and special I want to share with you guys. Hopefully you guys don't skip past the intro because I really want you guys to be able to hear this. But I luckily was able to convince one of my friends in the community, Tomcat Thompson from Strange Brew Podcast, aka The Raptilian, to create a rap theme intro that I can use interchangeably for the end of the show and for the beginning of the show, whenever I feel like using it. But he put together this awesome Inquiries of Our Reality rap, and I want to share it with you guys for the first time on the show. So without further ado, here it goes. The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey with a mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality.
So again, huge shout out to Tom from Strange Brew for putting that one together. I've been listening to their show essentially since I started my podcast, and I get hyped to their theme song every single time I hear it. And honestly, he's one of my favorite in the community because he combines all of the elements of the community, of course, and combines them into his songs and creates a lot of really, really cool stuff. So if you guys haven't checked out The Reptilian, beyond, of course, doing the theme song for this and, of course, for Strange Brew, he definitely has a full back catalog of songs and videos and everything he's been working on. So definitely go and check out The Reptilian. I'm going to make sure I include the links down in the show description. And again, Tom, big shout out. Really appreciate it. And I absolutely love it. Couldn't have turned out any better, man. And moving into the news and updates, front of house stuff, of course. I'm going to keep beating this one like a dead horse until it comes to the event, but I will be vending at Small Town Monster Fest 2. That'll be June 29th in downtown Canton, Ohio at the Doubletree by Hilton. Kids 12 and under are free. Everybody else, you guys will have to make sure you guys scoop your tickets. But for that event, it's going to be the full crew. It's going to be me. It's going to be Orin. It's going to be Jenny. It's going to be Gabby. It's going to be the kids. It's going to be a lot of fun. And shout out to one of the longtime listeners who will be joining the Open Minds Media family as soon as he gets his podcast up and rolling. And we just recorded the first episode of it the other day, so I'll give you guys more information as we move a little bit farther. But longtime listener Riley is finally getting Midwest Mythos rolling, and he will also be at that event helping us out at the table and stuff, promoting his podcast and stuff. But I'm really looking forward to the event. I'm hoping to see a lot of you guys out there. So if anybody is planning on coming, let me know, because I'd absolutely love to know you by face and name. But if not, I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys out there. And moving into the front of house stuff, of course, it's been a while since I've gotten a review for the show. If you guys enjoyed the show and you guys think I've earned it, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify, preferably iTunes, of course, because then you guys can leave a review and I can read it on the show and give you guys a big shout out. I absolutely love reading that stuff. And I know I usually throw this in at the end of the show, but if you guys don't mind doing it, and you guys, again, think I've earned it, I would greatly appreciate it if you guys left those 5-star reviews. Keep expanding the show as much as we can this year, build up the community, get some more bigger guests onto the show, and just keep expanding as a whole. And the only way I'm ever going to be able to do that is with all of your guys' help. So anything you guys do, going back towards that, I can't even express how much I appreciate it. And don't forget to go and follow Inquiries of Our Reality and Open Minds Media on Instagram and on Facebook. And while you're at it, you guys can also join the Open Minds Media community on Discord to have fascinating conversations with like-minded individuals. And if you guys are looking for video content of all of the shows, you guys can go and check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok. Something that I recently started doing is, I know it's been a while since I've been making the TikTok clips. I've been trying to figure out new programs in order to make that kind of stuff. But at least for right now, and I'm probably going to continue on in the future, I will be dropping a wavelength format video version of all the episodes for Bizarre Encounters and for Inquiries of Our Reality onto YouTube. So you guys can at least go and check that out over on the feed, because I know some of you guys prefer using YouTube over using some of the podcast platforms. So that's just going to be something else that's going to be going on over there. And with Riley, hopefully joining up with Open Minds Media and everything, we have a lot of ideas that we want to work on for documentaries, because both of us live a lot closer to each other. So that's definitely something else to look out for over there. I apologize that I haven't been too active over there, but you know, I've been knocking out the audio content. That's always been my thing anyways, and the YouTube and TikTok has been kind of an expansion, but I know I need to work on it over there a little bit. And speaking of other shows, if you guys haven't checked out Bizarre Encounters, highly recommend that you do. It's a lot of fun. It's me and my co-host Orin, and a little bit different from the format of this show. We do a lot more of our deep dives, of course, and we do have some interviews in the mix, but most of the show is us doing deep dives. And we also do a sideshow off of that called Bizarre Inquiries, which, as you guys saw, just came back last week after taking a brief hiatus. And we're always looking for listener questions to be submitted for that one so we can discuss them on the show. Doesn't matter what it is, we want to be able to discuss it and let our minds wander. So if you guys wouldn't mind submitting some questions for Bizarre Inquiries, I would greatly appreciate it. And if anybody has an encounter to report, no matter how big, no matter how small, I definitely want to hear about it. You guys can either type it out, or you guys can record yourselves and you guys can send it to me through email that way. Depending on what you want to do with it, either one, I want to make a compilation episode where Orin and I kind of talk about some of your guys' experiences, do some of the replays, read some stuff off, and kind of give our theories and thoughts on them. But on the other side of it, if you're somebody out there that doesn't want your story told to anybody, but you just want somebody to talk to about it and not look at you like you're crazy, I'm also here for that. I would absolutely love to hear about those. And if you don't want your story shared, it will not be shared anywhere on the internet, of course. And depending if you guys are close enough to me, I would love to actually come out and be able to investigate it for you. So that's definitely an option too. But of course, none of that will happen unless you report your encounters to ommencounterreports at outlook.com. And if you guys are looking for ways to support the show, the number one best way to do so is through the Patreon. Recently updated those tiers again over there due to, like I said, some of the video stuff and having to change some of my programs. So there's a lot more benefits for lower tiers, higher tiers. It's all been moved around again. I know I've been saying this for a few weeks, but I recently updated again about a week ago. But there is also a free trial for the $3 tier and the $5 tier if you guys want to check it out and see what it's all about. And the other way you guys can support the show is through the Open Minds Media merch store. Over there, you'll find stuff for Inquiries of Our Reality, Bizarre Encounters, Bizarre Inquiries, and a bunch of other paranormal, cryptid-related designs and stuff like that I've been working on. Got some other new stuff I'm working on, so you guys will definitely be seeing that drop onto the store relatively soon. But as for right now, I got a lot of really, really cool stuff over there. And if you guys want to pick up something for yourself, you guys can use code CRYPTID10 to receive 10% off at checkout. And if you guys are thinking about joining the Patreon, with each of the Patreon tiers, there's different promo codes for the online store. And of course, there are bigger discounts depending on which tier you pick. So if you guys are planning on doing both, definitely recommend signing up for the Patreon first, of course. And if anybody's interested in podcast or audiobook production services, you guys can also shoot me a message on Open Minds Media. A way I'm trying to expand the portfolio, help out with finances around the house. Whether you're a podcaster that's thinking about just starting, or you're somebody who's been doing it for a while and you want to try to make your job a little bit easier, I'm here to help you out with all that stuff. And as far as the audiobook stuff goes, it's something I haven't done before, but I would definitely love to work on. So if any authors out there would be interested in having an audiobook made, also, again, shoot me a message through Open Minds Media. And of course, have to give a shout out to all of the sponsors in the community. Number one, of course, IKNOWSQUATCH. Definitely recommend going and checking them out for all of your squatchy gear needs. And you guys can also check out Cryptoteeology for all of your wearable cryptid favorites. And you guys can check out Snarly for a fantastic smoky cedar with a hint of mint, beard oil, beard balm, body wash, and beard shampoo. And on top of doing all of that, Dave, aka Snarly puts on a lot of fantastic events near the West Virginia area, one of which was the Cryptid Halloween event that Orin and I were at last year. And we will also be returning again this year, and we will be speaking and emceeing. So if you guys are near the West Virginia area, definitely go and check out his pages, see if there's any cool events going on. A lot of the time they are free admission, and they're always family friendly. So you guys will be able to hang out with the whole family, have a good weekend, hang out with a bunch of awesome people in the community. And of course, it's always a good time around Dave. And going into the affiliate links, if you guys haven't checked out the newest sponsor of the show, Oregon-ite, definitely recommend checking them out if you are a spiritual person. He creates these fantastic pieces that take in negative energy and put out positive energy. He has some that work for productivity, some that work for happiness, but he's got a large array of different pieces that he all hand makes himself. So if you guys want to check that out and scoop one for yourself, you guys can use the affiliate link, of course, first and foremost, and then you guys can also use code OMM for 10% off at checkout. And to all the paranormal investigators out there, you guys can go and check out the Chattergeist. It is the all-in-one paranormal investigating device. My absolute favorite. I use it every single time that I go out. Barry is the one that programs and develops it, and he also runs the Instagram page. So if any of you guys have any technical questions whatsoever, he'll be able to answer all of those for you. And he recently did an episode of Bizarre Encounters, probably about 5 or 6 back now, I'd say. So if you guys want to hear a lot more about the Chattergeist, you guys can always go and check out that episode. And if you guys want to receive 10% off the Chattergeist, you guys can use our affiliate link to get that 10% off deal. And just heads up to all you guys, he is over there in the UK, so the money is in pounds, but it will convert over. So don't be discouraged if you are somebody that's in the US and you're seeing that pounds conversion, because it does ship to the US and it does convert through PayPal and all that kind of stuff. And can't say it enough. Make sure you guys use those affiliate links. Greatly goes back towards helping the show, and I greatly appreciate you guys for doing so. And every single thing that I've mentioned is all available in the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show for the third time now, Thrash. How's it going today, man?
What's going on? How are you, Shane?
Not too bad, man. Absolute pleasure to always have you on the show. Let's see, what the first time you came on, I think you were talking about your paranormal experiences, or maybe that was the second time. And then the first time, one of those times, we were talking about the Pueblo clowns. So I've had multiple fascinating conversations already, and I'm always excited to see what you're diving into, man.
I'll be honest. Life was pretty crazy and kind of, I don't even remember which episode was which. So, I don't know if it was Pueblo Clowns. Was it Pueblo Clowns?
Pueblo Clowns may have been first, actually, because I remember originally how we'd met was that I had heard you on the Occult Rejects or New York Patriot show, one of the two, and you were talking about the Pueblo Clowns, and I was like, hey, I want you to come on my show and talk about the Pueblo Clowns, and you said it was like one of the first podcasts you did. So then the second time, it must have been when we were talking about your paranormal experiences then.
Yeah, it was like the weird paranormal stuff and like connected with like weird family stuff that was going on. Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's it. Yep. I mean, for anybody who wants to go back and check those episodes out, I don't remember what episode numbers they are offhand, but if you guys just find Thrash in the feed, you guys will be able to go back and check those out. Or maybe I can even add the links down in the show description if anybody's interested in going and checking those out. But it's one of those things, man, that it's funny. Like the first time you came on the show, like you said, you only went on New York Patriots podcast, and it was like one of the first ones you've been on. And then the second time, you're a little bit more comfortable. So this time, you seem even more comfortable than the last time. So it's been a progression with you, man. But I'm happy to see it, especially considering you've been talking about starting your own show up for a while now. And I feel like step one, man, is getting comfortable on the microphone. And then from there, I mean, I think you'll be able to keep rolling with it, man. You'll be able to finally get that podcast rolling.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Hey man, we got the logo already made that I threw together for you, man. So you already got a logo. That's already part of the battle,
exactly.
man.
Exactly. That's really the last step I needed. That and just going. So eventually it'll happen. Stay tuned.
As it's intended to happen, man. It'll all fall into place. And I don't know if you're throwing the name around still, but for that logo at least that we worked on, it was going to be Thrash Talk. So for anybody that may be interested in the future for looking that up, I know you didn't want to get too heavy into it, but if you guys ever see Thrash Talk as a podcast, just know that this is the guy over here that'll be the one running that
Thrash Talk, yeah.
So I guess kind of hopping into the stuff today, because I know that you have a lot to dive into, and this was something that we've been wanting to do for a little while now. You're able to kind of collect your thoughts on it a little bit, because I think last time we went to record, we were having some issues with audio or something like that, and we ended up having to postpone it or something, but we're here now, and I know that we were kind of talking about it a little bit before the show, and it's definitely something that I think is going to draw everybody in. So I guess without further ado, man, I'll give you the reins for now and kind of let you get into what you want to dive into today, man.
Yeah, so we're going to get deep into the Mandela effect. It's going to be a little interactive with the listeners. So I'm going to ask what everybody remembers of a particular thing. It might be a geography question. It might be a history question. It might be a logo of a brand. It might be the spelling of a brand. It could be just about anything.
Pop quiz. We just got to yell pop quiz time every time we're about to do it.
Yeah, I know the Mandela effect, it kind of irritates some people, but oh well, I'm sorry, turn it off.
So I guess at least with the Mandela effect, man, there's a lot of different avenues to start on, and it kind of depends on which context you're coming into. Assumably, a lot of people listening to this podcast most likely are familiar with the Mandela effect, but at least before we kind of start diving really into it, we can dig into the theories on it a little bit later, of course, but if you want to give people kind of a simplified idea of what the Mandela effect is for anybody that may not be familiar.
Yeah, I would say the best definition of it, can't really define it in my opinion, but a good way of kind of describing it is basically like where a collective group of people have a memory of a particular thing, but that memory has never it's never existed or ever happened that way. It's something different. And there's some people that remember it how it is. There's some people that remember it how it never was, but it's normally even if people are misremembering it, the same group of people are misremembering the same thing.
It's one of those things that it's really hard to even explain it without already getting into theories about it. I know like the number one go-to theory that most people say is time slips, of course, that we're slipping between multiple dimensions, multiple realities. So there's different memories for different groups of people, but it's almost like a correction of the timeline possibly. Or on the other side, I know everybody digs into the CERN stuff. They recently sparked it up within the last couple months. So maybe there's going to be some new Mandela effects that start popping up here. But it seems like whenever they start clashing particles together, that weird stuff kind of starts happening around it.
You know, a lot of weird like synchronicities and serendipities and stuff has been happening. The last Mandela effect episode I did on Nick's channel, and it was the day after they turned CERN back on. and we had planned the episode like at least a month beforehand.
So, I mean, at least for the Mandela effect, man, it's one of those things that it things fall how they're supposed to fall, as it seems with that kind of a thing. Like a lot of the time when you're talking about it, there's like a lot of like synchronicities that'll happen, such as like with that episode with everything kind of planning out with it being the day after and stuff. But the problem with that, of course, is that like the day after, you may not start to realize these Mandela effects right away, but there might be a whole other extended list that people aren't even fully aware of yet, or just starting to realize little snippets of it, you know?
Yeah, and there's little things like people have personal ones, or it might be something that not a lot of people know about. Like I have one I'm going to talk about that was my grandpa's. It was like one of my we basically stumbled upon it on accident. We'll get into that later, but yeah, it's weird how these things. Yeah, like you said, you get into something and then there's like a synchronicity or something with it.
Dude, but I got one in particular that we'll dive into a little bit later. I'm not sure if you already kind of have it on your list coming up, but I have one that's very personal to me, at least. And okay. I guess a good spot to at least kind of start explaining some of these Mandela effects is obviously there's the one that everybody became super aware of it, which we'll dive into, but I feel like the best place to start is why it's called the Mandela effect. And I'm assuming that, at least from some of your research, you probably have a little bit better of an explanation on the story of why it's called the Mandela effect. Because I know the pieces of it, of course, but I want to make sure I say all the information correctly as far as that goes.
Yeah, it's exactly. It comes from Nelson Mandela, and basically, there's a memory of people that see. I'm born later, so I don't have a memory of this at all. So I personally feel the name is dumb. I feel like I feel like we're stuck with the name, but there should be a better name to describe it than Mandela effect, because that's like as soon as you say that, people are like, I don't know.
See, I feel like Mandela's fitting in a different way because you also have the spiritual Mandelas, you know? So I've kind of associated it more with, like, I know it's Mandela, the person, but Mandela being like a geometric pattern of the universe also kind of fits in a weird way in my mind, too. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
There's a memory that some people remember that Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 90s. And that was basically the start of it. And there was a paranormal researcher that went on Coast to Coast Radio. I'm blanking on her name right this second. I tried pulling up my notes, and of course that page is gone. But anyways, she said, she brought that up on the show, that there was like a convention that happened and people remembered Nelson Mandela dying in the 90s in prison. But for me personally, I remember the funeral in 2013 on TV. So I couldn't really tell you which way or another on that one.
But I mean, moving it into at least the most popular one where it became somewhat of like an internet icon that people started actually looking into this stuff is the whole Shazaam / what was the name of the other movie? Kazaam. Yep, the whole Shazaam / Kazaam thing. And at least for me, like I remember the one with Shaq. At least I remember Shazaam. I don't remember Kazaam. But I know that I've talked to a good handful of people that can like describe that movie like scene for scene, and they all describe it the same. So unless there's like some type of like group up where everybody is like saying, all right, this is what we're going to tell people when it comes to this movie, like there's some weirdness to it. And even on the other side, I mean, it seems like that one in particular came out before the whole internet AI generated image thing really worked the way it was really supposed to. It was back when it was before that stuff was even happening, and to be honest with you. But there was an interview where Sinbad was talking about how, like, I've been told to lie to you. That movie did exist, blah, 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 blah. And again, it's before AI where people could really do that kind of stuff to that extent. So it's like there's still something weird to that this guy at first was also saying, oh, that never exists. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And then in some other interviews, he's like, yeah, they told me not to talk about that. We can't talk about that, but it's there. It existed.
Well, I've went deep into looking into this, Now, okay, so Shazam, it was supposed to be the one with Sinbad, and Kazam is the one that came out a few years later that has Shaq in it. But the Shazam movies never existed. Now, when I was a little kid, I remember I was no later than 6 years old. Um, with I was with my mom and dad. We lived in the trailer, and I remember renting the movie from Hollywood Video and watching it at the trailer. I remember the TV was next to the fireplace, kind of in the corner in front of the couch. I remember watching that movie.
See, I think you're a hair bit older than me. And when it comes to a lot of these Mandela effects, they seem to kind of run in age groups. Like, I'm kind of curious if people from different age groups kind of crossfade into different realities, if you kind of get into the more woo-woo idea behind this. But, you know, I just turned 30, and I know you're a couple of years older than me, and most of the people that I know of who've talked about that movie existing scene for scene are usually an average of like 2 to 3 years older than me. So, and then the millennials like me, like the, you know, tail end of millennials, we all remember the one with Shaq.
Yeah, see, to me, it's almost like the Mandela one. You know what I mean? Like, I'm after Mandela would have died in prison, so I don't even have a memory of any of that. You know, I would have been another 3-4 years anyways before I would have started remembering news stories and stuff like that anyways. But so the same thing, it would be like if you were born a few years later, past when that movie was supposedly came out, if it came out, you wouldn't even have a memory of that movie. But if it was a movie, well, let's say it was Kazam, let's say the Shaq movie never existed. You know, and let's say I was born a few years after you, might not really remember that Shaq movie at all because it was just past before my time.
See, this is where I might get into kind of a weird spot, because it's a little bit less on like the woo-woo side. But like, are you somewhat of like a Grateful Dead fan? Like, are you somewhat familiar with the Grateful Dead?
Oh yeah.
So you know about the show that never happened, that whole thing, right?
Elaborate.
So there's this recording supposedly of this show that they basically like tricked a bunch of people into thinking that it actually happened. And later on, like the band came out and was saying like, yeah, that show never actually happened. But people claimed it was like the greatest Grateful Dead show that ever happened. But like originally, the first time they did it, there was a band member that was already supposed to be dead at that point, so it didn't work. And then the second time it ended up working where people believed it, and it was the show that never happened. And of course, digging into the Grateful Dead, there's the whole like MK Ultra psyop aspect of them. They have CIA connections and stuff. So obviously, you know, they're working with psychedelics and trying to see if they could almost like alter people's perceptions, reality, even if it's not from like an evil government standpoint for the Grateful Dead side, but just because of, you know, they were psychnauts, and psychology is interesting to a psychnaut, of course. So they probably just want to see if they could pull it off. But that whole idea that they were just trying to see if they could convince people and mess with people's memories enough to convince them that an event happened that never actually happened, and have a group of people that will stand behind this thing and say this event happened. I wonder if Shazam, for example, might be a perfect example of one of those things. And that might actually even explain the interview where he said, I can't talk about it. Like, it happened. It exists, but I can't talk about it. It may not be a typical Mandela effect, even though we associate with Mandela effects. It may actually be more of like this MK Ultra concept to see if they can like create things and then scrub things and like alter people's memories. And it's just an attempt to understand more of like the human psyche and how you can alter previous memories and events in somebody's head.
I see. I've delved deep into a lot of the Grateful Dead stuff and everything. I've never heard of that before, but that's super interesting. But I don't want to forget, because you reminded me again of what you said. So when you look deep into this Mandela effect thing, there's a lot of stuff that people have put out there that discredit the Mandela effect. There's stuff like, for instance, people will make like fake videos and stuff that'll show like, you've probably seen the video, like the guy walks in the next room and the book turns the title turns. I don't want to get into the Mandela effect right now, but the title of the book changes when he walks into the room. It's fake. But there's a Sinbad one that came out on April Fool's. It was around 2016, 2017, and it looks like a VHS movie from like the 90s, and it shows these two kids, and it shows Sinbad like in a genie outfit, and he like comes out and everything, and they have like other Mandela effects in the little clip, but it was made by College Humor.
I was going to say, I remember people saying that popular clip that went around was never a memory they had of the movie. They said the movie didn't look like that. It wasn't that cheesy and crappy looking.
Yeah, that was just made by College Humor as an April Fool's joke. But for a while, Sinbad was like angry. Like you can find clips of him like fiery mad for some reason that people have a memory of him playing a genie. But then after a while, he started trolling people with it. So then he's like, there's like a clip of him saying like, oh, we put it, there's one video VHS tape left and it's locked in a safe, but the CIA has it and nobody's going to get it. He's literally trolling people now.
Is he trolling though? That's the weird part about it, because when it gets into some of that like programming, especially if you're involved in some of these psychological operations, like I feel like there's some breaks in the programming and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it could go both ways. It could be that he's a complete fucking troll, or on the other side, it could be the point where they pretty much said, "Tell him the fucking truth," because it's going to sound batshit fucking crazy, and then people aren't going to believe it regardless. Like, go and tell them the truth, because that's what we want you to do, because it's going to fuck people up, and they're not going to know which trail to follow.
Personally, Shane, I don't think he ever remembers playing in the movie. I don't think he ever did, because that movie's never existed. But for some reason, there's people that remember it, because there's several people that I grew up with that are around my age group that remember the movie. And I've brought up Mandela effect, and they bring up the movie, but without me bringing it up. And they have similar memories of scenes. And then when I first learned of the Mandela effect of that movie, there was a blog where somebody did a, what do you call that? Basically a synopsis of the whole movie, and they went scene for scene of how they remembered it, and it was like exactly how I remembered it. And I was trying to find that a couple months back when we first
that's probably been scrubbed, bro, on purpose.
Could not find it. I could not find it.
Yep, told you it's fucking scrubbed. Because at least like with Sinbad not remembering that he was in this thing, if you're getting into the parallel dimension concept behind this kind of shit, I mean, if they're messing with realities and some of these dimensions are almost like cross-fading into each other, I was talking about the age group thing. I mean, we could almost be looking at it that way. Like, if time doesn't exist in the concept that we think it does, but people that are born around the same point as you kind of travel through space-time with you, then it would almost kind of make sense that there could be like, you're shifting within generations. Like, you're staying with your generation, but the generations below and above you are alternating and changing with different parallel dimension versions of each other. So it's like the same people exist in other people's realities. It's just they have different memories because they're all close to being the same reality, just with slight differences because they're exactly parallel, which could be why they're cross-fading into each other, because they're all existing simultaneously next to each other and just kind of blending back and forth.
Well, like, for instance, that kind of reminds me, like a Bible change, like a Mandela effect Bible change. Like, for me, I remember a scripture a certain way. Well, that scripture is now changed. Well, let's say somebody wants to start reading the Bible and they learn that scripture. Well, now that scripture is different than how I remember it. So now that person is remembering that scripture a completely different way, which a lot of the time, these Mandela affected scriptures, they kind of have like a completely different meaning. So then over time, even that meaning is going to be completely different than like how I think of that scripture, if that makes any sense.
Dude, I got a prime example of one of these scripture ones. I had somebody on the show a while back ago who was like involved in the church and everything like that. Forgot what his name is offhand, but he wrote the Conspiracy Theorist Survival Guide, if anybody wants to go back and check that one out. But he was talking about the whole concept behind, I guess I'll leave this to you. because we'll do this back and forth. What does the lamb lay with?
I'm glad you asked. What do you remember, Shane?
Wrong answers only, but it's always been the lion and the lamb. And he was saying that he obviously became like aware, and he ended up losing his family over all this kind of stuff because they thought he was like crazy because he became aware of this kind of stuff. But he always remembered it as the lion and the lamb also. And he found it in the book, and it literally is changed to the lion or the wolf and the lamb. And he was even saying that he was asking other priests, other people involved in the church, and they all remembered it as the lion and the lamb. And he went back and looked and pointed it out to him, and they went, and just went about their day. And he was just like, there is weird things going on in this reality all around us. You being a spiritual person should be aware of the fact that things like this can be altered and changed. So if you see these things happen right in front of you, and you're somebody who studied the Bible your entire life, and you can just, your reaction to this is, okay, and you just walk away from it. Like what do you, how are you spiritually aware but not actually aware? Like, if you've learned this book front to back cover and something's different in it, like, you would know that it's different in it. Like, like, trust your own memory and instinct on that one. Like, that one's been one of the weirdest ones to me, because I've even always associated that with like April, for example, because the whole like either comes in like a lamb and out like a lion, or out like a lion, or in like a lion and out like a lamb, kind of that whole thing. Like, where would that context have came from if not from like biblical context, like a lot of our expressions?
Shane, I'm so glad you brought this one up, because it's probably it's the one that sold the Mandela effect for me, because I literally saw it change within a month or two. It was always a lion and a lamb. It was always a lion and a lamb.
I remember my grandma having little figurines of that when I was a kid. It was never a wolf. It was always a lion and a lamb. It was like the little glass figurines, like, elderly people have all around the house.
Do me a favor, maybe pause the video or audio if you're listening to this. Go to Google and type in Isaiah 11:6 images and see what the majority of the images show next to the scripture. The majority of them show a lion and a lamb, but you go in your Bible, it's not a lion and a lamb. It's a wolf and a lamb. Later on in the scripture, it says a lion and something else. I have it here. A calf and the lion and the yearling. That's the New International Version. So the Isaiah 11:6 on this, a New International Version on Bible Gateway, it says, the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. Now, Shane, I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. There was a book that we had for kids. It was called Bible Stories. I have a picture of it here I could share in a second. I'm going to laugh if you had the same book I had when I was a kid, because I had this like little kid's Bible that I used to carry around when I was a kid, and I haven't seen the cover since, and I've been trying to like find it just for nostalgic sake. I'm going to laugh if you had the same one I had when I was a kid. Well, this is a little bit different. It's a bigger book. It's like, it was yellow and it was embossed with red lettering, and it was My Bible Stories. And it was produced by the Jehovah's Witnesses for kids. And it had all kinds of paintings in it. But it talked about some of the most popular stories in the Bible, of course. Well, one of the pages in that book, full page, was a little boy, a blonde boy, sitting cross-legged. And it had like a baby... it had a baby lamb, and it had a lion cub in his lap. Well, after I had found out about this, that page is not in that book now. It's gone. It's never been in that book. And I have opened the very same one I owned when I was a kid. And here's the thing. So when I first learned of this effect, or whatever you want to call it, it was first just the King James, because people are saying, oh, it's lion and lamb. And so I went home, and I have, like, since I grew up Jehovah's Witness, we have probably 15, 20 different Jehovah's Witness Bibles throughout probably the 60s and 70s, 80s, or whatever. I have a particular one I grab. I'll go to Isaiah 11:6, and it still said lion and lamb. I was like, well, okay. I'm like, oh, weird. It changed into King James, but it was still in there because there's certain ones that change only into King James, and there's certain ones that are like universal. All of a sudden, a month or two down the line, the Mandela videos and stuff are coming out, and they're like, it's changed in every Bible. I'm like, there's no way. I'm like, I literally just looked like a month ago. So I grabbed the very same Bible again, opened up to it, and it was changed to wolf, the very same Bible. And it's not like somebody came in and switched the Bible in my house, and every single Bible is changed with that one. And then that Bible story book, that painting of that little boy is gone. When I saw it change from 1 month to the next, then I knew 100%. Because at first I was kind of like, huh, this is interesting. But when I saw that, for me personally, it sold it.
Dude, that's when it comes down to religion, and it's not just one of those things like pop culture where people like kind of loosely remember stuff. Like people take those words exactly to heart. So for most people that I feel like they've been convinced of the Mandela effect, most of it comes down to biblical stuff. Because of course everybody's entertained with the pop culture stuff, but the biblical stuff takes on a scarier feeling to it. That like your holy words are literally being changed somehow.
Yeah. And what's interesting is how like preachers or people that's supposed to be, I don't know, they get very angry about it when because they think that you're saying that, I don't know, they think that like God, the Bible, the words in the physical Bible can't change, but they can't. I don't know. To me, it's almost like, I've heard other people say this, think of this. It's almost like if it was like a creator or something, like if you believe in the Bible or something, it like not to idolize the book, like to, like you were saying earlier, Shane, like you'd think if you studied it enough and read it enough and everything, and when you saw a change, you would be, whoa, that's weird. I've read this for 20 years. I know that scripture for sure. Because there's certain scriptures I know for sure. There's just certain ones I know just... I don't know.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And we are back, so let's hop right in. Just for the sake of it, the one that's always stuck in my head, of course, is the whole like wolf and the lamb one. But do you have some more examples offhand before we get into some of the more fun pop culture stuff as far as like some of the biblical changes are?
Yeah, I do have a few. And what's interesting is like some of these change in a lot of the Bibles, but the Jehovah's Witness Bible, for some reason, a lot of the Mandela effects doesn't change in that one. Like I'll see people doing Bible review ones, and they'll change in that Bible, in like that Bible, but I'll check in the Jehovah's Witness Bibles here, and they a lot of them are how people remember it still.
Just for the sake of it, do you know offhand what page in the Bible that the lamb and the wolf one is? Because when I was at a pawn shop, or not a pawn shop, but an antique store one day, I was lucky enough to find in a random box hidden in the back a Freemason Holy Bible that was printed in 1924. So I'm kind of curious.
Yeah. Isaiah 11:6.
Which one it is in here. I'm about to look it up. If you want to go through some more examples, I'm going to look it up. You said Isaiah 11:6?
Yes. Yes, and there's one in Isaiah. No, not Isaiah. Exodus. Exodus 34:14. Where it basically, here's the New International Version. Do not worship any other God, for the Lord, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. Now, I do not remember that scripture reading that way. To me, that seems very weird that now it's saying that whose name is jealous is a jealous God. His name is not jealous. Or that one to me is just seems sinister.
The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb. So even in a 1924 printed Freemason Holy Bible, it still says that.
Interesting. Very interesting. I almost got a hold of one of those, but the person decided to throw it away and didn't ask me if I wanted it.
Dude, there's a lot of there's the whole beginning of it, at least in this edition that I have, is all like weird pictures of building like the Tower of Babel.
Interesting.
Like,
You'd think it would be, the Temple of Solomon or something.
Actually, maybe it is. Hold on. Let me get to the pictures. Yeah, never mind. It's Solomon's Temple. My mistake.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot of
yeah, those look those look very detailed.
Yeah, like
wow. Huh. Yeah.
And I've only
Ark of
noticed
the
it
Covenant.
specific in this Freemason Bible.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But yeah, that was just a lucky find one day.
That's interesting that it's changed in that one too. But yeah, that one's changed in every Bible. And I've seen another channel, like he's walked up to Jehovah's Witnesses who are like that, where they hand out like free magazines and stuff like that. And he asked him about Isaiah 11:6. And then they look it up like on their tablets. He was like trying to get them to look it up in their actual phone, like their actual Bible. But the Jehovah's Witnesses are big into like the iPads and stuff. Like they don't really use the books and stuff anymore because they just have everything on their library, every book they've ever made. So then they just look everything up on there. But then when they looked it up, they just seemed kind of like, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
I guess that's what it said. I was wrong.
And to me, you would think people that are that zealous over their religion and they're on Sundays, they're going out during the week and trying to get people and preaching and going, the Jehovah's Witnesses are known for going door to door. And then during COVID, they're sending letters. And you would think if you're that involved, like you said, a scripture like that people that aren't even that big in the Bible normally know, you would think if you saw somebody showed you that and it's different, that you would have a reaction. But a lot of these people don't, or they have the opposite or they have this complete opposite reaction where they flip out and go completely nuts. There's some I think a debate on YouTube between two preachers, and it's basically just a shouting match. Like the one guy won't even listen. And he just basically thinks that the Bible can't change and that we're just being blasphemous. But we're not even like trying to we're just trying to point out that something's happening.
Yeah, people still want to ignore it.
Yeah. And to me, it's mind blowing that you can study it so much and not see something. Here's another interesting one. Okay, so when when the Israelites were in Egypt, right? Who passed over the houses during the plagues or whatever? So they were supposed to put blood on the door, and eat whatever house had blood on the door. What spirit was supposed to pass by the house? Are you familiar with that?
I know the story, but I can't remember it off the top of my head right now.
Okay, so how I always remember it, it was an angel came through, and he basically killed all the firstborns, but if the passed over the houses that had the blood on the door or whatever. Well, now it's God himself that goes through and does all the killing, and not the angel of death.
That doesn't even make sense.
No.
Like, why would God come and do the dirty work, so to speak?
That's what I mean. And it was always the angel came through and was the one that did it, but now God is the one that's going through and doing that. Like, that just doesn't even make sense to me. Which, like I was saying earlier, that completely changes the whole meaning of the story. So let's say somebody learns that now they learn that God goes over and kills all the firstborn. So now there's a completely different meaning and context to it. Now, you would think if you pointed that out to a preacher, they would be like, well, that doesn't sound right. But more than likely, they're just going to get mad at you and say that you're being blasphemous. So hopefully they'll listen if you show them. But just be prepared. People get very angry over this for some reason. They get as angry over like flat Earth. There's like even like flat Earth researchers that like flip out over Mandela effect.
That's because it shatters their paradigm, man. If anything breaks anybody's reality, they ignore it or they get really angry about it. When you have the religious context brought into it, like if it's just a typical Mandela effect, which we'll get into those fun ones in a minute here, but those ones people will just be like, oh, whatever, they pass over if it's something that they don't want to believe in, whatever. But if you start actually questioning part of somebody's religion, like it brings it to a whole other level.
Whole nother level. Well, and what's interesting is the mainstream explanation is that it's just, you're just remembering it wrong, which
group hallucinations, like they always try to say is a thing, but it's never actually been like proven to have actually ever existed.
I mean, like in a way they're right. Cause like what I remember never happened. But at the same time, they try to make it like your memory is so fallible. Like I used to listen to like Joe Rogan and stuff all the time, and your memory's horrible. Oh, it's just memory's horrible. You don't really remember hardly anything. But that's not true. Me personally, I have like almost like, I wouldn't say photographic, but it's pretty close. Like I can read something and basically remember it, or hear something and remember it forever.
I mean, some stuff is linked to particular memories, which I got a couple of Mandela effects that, again, we can get into. We get into like the more pop culture-y stuff. But like prime example, I guess, kind of leading into that stuff is everybody's fully aware of like the Berenstain versus the Berenstein Bears. It was always Berenstein, and the reason I remember that to a T was because that's when I was learning how to read. So it's not like I just misread that my entire life as a kid. When I was learning how to read, like that was one of the first books that we were given at the time. So it's like, how many times and how many different Berenstein Bear books did you go over that, no doubt in my mind, it was never Berenstain, it was always Berenstein, because again, I was learning how to read at the time of reading that. So that's one of those things that's like, that's not malleable, like the first words you learn get like stuck in your head, of course.
No, Shane, I had not only had the books, I have 100% of a memory of watching. They had the show on TV when I was a little kid. Like I remember a couple times being home sick from school, and it'd be like Franklin the turtle would come on.
I remember that.
And then it would be like Bernstein, and it was Steen, Stein, or however you want to spell.
Then Richard Scarry or whatever the hell. You remember that one?
I do remember that one. Yeah,
with the worm and like the cats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it. I'm telling you, it. Sorry, this you're gonna have to edit this part out. I just shit in mind. It just blows my mind.
Well, I guess getting into some of the more mind blowing ones because,
But the okay. So with the Bernstein, right? So I there was a show, there was the books. Literally, I have the books from when I was a kid. I grabbed the books and it's stained. That show, it's stained. It's never been stained, and I'm sorry, it was stained. It's yeah, it's mind blowing.
I mean, just in general, though, I mean, this may be biased, but Berenstein versus Berenstain. Berenstein seems a lot more probable as a name than Berenstain. Like, Steen is like a typical end to like a last name. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen, Goldstain. It's always Goldstein. Like,
I think I've heard Bernstein several times. I've never heard of a Bernstein before.
that's what I'm saying. It's not like it doesn't sound like a probable name that they would have used anyways. And again, I remember that E because I remember it being in cursive on the cover of the book. Books, TV show.
Yeah,
all of it.
I could see the cursive right now. Yeah, I can see the lettering. Yeah. 100%. Another one that's kind of similar to that I have now. The show like Charlie Brown and Peanuts?
Yeah, of course.
What do you remember the name of the creator of Peanuts being?
I don't remember that one offhand either.
Okay, so me personally, it was always Schultz. It was Schultz. And what's even crazier about this is that a few blocks away from where I grew up, my mom's going to school all the time, there's a street named after him because he lived here for, I think it was like 5 or 6 months, and it was before he had even created the series or the comics or anything, but he had drew the characters on his kids' walls and stuff. And the Smithsonian had even cut the drywall out of that house, and they even display that at the Smithsonian. So they named the street after him. And I would walk by that street all the time going to school and back from school, and it was Schultz. Well, that street is changed along with his name to now Scholl's. Schulz. And I'm sorry, that street was not Scholl's. It was Schultz. But it's now Scholl's.
Damn, I wish I could have thrown in a little bit of context on that one because I don't remember at all. Like, I remember Charlie Brown, of course, watching the movies, reading the books, everything like that. But I never, at least at the time that was out as a kid, I wasn't paying attention to who like the creator was at the time. But at least a little bit different for you. Like, you're physically walking down the street. That's one of those things that's just like, how many times do you see a sign that people can still tell your memory's wrong?
Yeah, and then we had a family friend, and he's the one that originally told me about it. He's like, yeah, that's named after the creator of Peanuts and everything. And yeah, saw it numerous times, and now that street is now changed. And another interesting thing. So, what do you remember the Smithsonian being called?
Smithsonian.
Like the full name, basically. What was? I don't want to give you the answer. I'm just trying.
Wasn't it Smithsonian Historical Society or something like that?
See, what I remember is it was always Smithsonian Institute.
Yes, that sounds familiar.
And even my grandpa, he had a story of his family drove from California to New York because they went to a Jehovah's Witness convention. It was like the biggest one at the time, at the Polo Fairgrounds, and they went to the Smithsonian, and every time he told the story or something about him going there, he always said, and we went to the Smithsonian Institute. And I always remember Smithsonian Institute. Well, it's never been the Smithsonian Institute. It's always been the Smithsonian Institution.
That also just doesn't sound Correct.
No, it doesn't sound right to me either.
I mean, digging into another one, at least talking about like the childhood memories thing, the Curious George one, on whether or not he had a tail or didn't have a tail. For me, at least, he had a tail, because here's my connection with my childhood. I used to have a stuffed Curious George stuffed animal, and I used to grab it by the tail and I used to spin it above my head. Where else would I have grabbed it from? The arm and spun it above my head? Like, I distinctly 100% remember grabbing it by the tail and spinning it above my head. Because Curious George was always associated as like a monkey rather than like a chimp.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I even remember him hanging from the tail.
Yes, exactly.
Like
in the original book and stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, and now he's an ape. He's a chimpanzee. Very strange. Yeah, and like, see, you have that memory of him spinning the tail. And I'm sure you know for 100% sure you were grabbing the tail. Like, it wasn't, oh, maybe it was the arm or the leg. My memory's not that good.
100%. I remember grabbing by the tail and spinning above my head, because it was just, it wouldn't have worked with like the arm. The arm would have been awkwardly shaped. Like, it wouldn't have had that helicopter spiral if it wasn't for the tail.
Yeah, because the arms and the legs almost made like a helicopter blade and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And then another childhood memory one that I know a lot of people are probably aware of is the Star Wars one with Luke, I am your father. And I remember I watched Star Wars religiously as a kid. Like, it's kind of funny later on in life. I used to always watch Star Wars with my dad when I was a kid and stuff. And then later on, we were like watching the movies. He was asking questions, and I was like, I thought you were a Star Wars fan. He was like, no, I would just put on Star Wars because then you wouldn't make a peep for 2 hours. So, yeah, I again would just zone into watching Star Wars, and it was always Luke, I am your father, and now it's no, or how do they word it now? It's no, I am your father. That's how they do it. And it's like the context, the way he says it is totally different. I remember hundreds of parodies of no, or Luke, I am your father. Like, that would
hundreds of parodies
worded that way.
Well, look at the Tommy Boy one where he's talking to the fan. He's like, Luke, I am your father. And it's a classic movie. Now, why would a Hollywood movie
misquote another movie?
Misquote another Hollywood movie? You know they would do their research and get the quote right. And not only that, you can find numerous clips of James Earl Jones. There's a famous clip, easy to find. Just do James Earl Jones, Luke, I am your father, and it pops up, and it's like a director's cut thing of him, like, and it like shows the script where it says, no, I am your father. But then he's like talking on camera, and I read, Luke, I am your father. And I was like, no, it can't be. What a lie, or whatever. It's like, so even he remembers saying that line, like remembers reading it, but that line was never spoke.
Because I can distinctly hear the specific way he says, Luke. With like, he pronounces it like a certain way. Like, I distinctly remember that as a kid. And I watched episode 5 was like my absolute fucking favorite. Empire Strikes Back. Like, I watched that one more times than any other Star Wars movie.
See, I'm not like, I didn't really watch Star Wars that much, but I'm pretty sure on that particular one, because that one I did watch quite a bit.
That's the fight in Cloud City right after Boba Fett comes, puts Han Solo in the carbonite and stuff, and they cut off his hand for the first time. That's that scene. It's like the tail end of episode 5 when they're in Cloud City, when Lando Calrissian fucking sells him out to the Empire.
Well, and then there's the C-3PO.
Oh, this fucking silver arm?
The leg.
Or the silver leg, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
See, now I have an action figure. I wished I had the picture. I didn't save it. I have a picture from a long time ago. I took a picture of it. From the 90s, C-3PO, and he's all gold. And it's an action figure in the box. And the funny thing is, like, the details, like, they paint, like, the little wires red and everything exactly how in the movie, but the calf is all gold. but in the movie, it's now silver. He has one silver calf.
Dude,
but
I
he's
have
gold everywhere else.
that exact action figure from the 90s, probably about 15 feet from me. And 100% it was gold. And I remember that also because I broke the leg off of one of them, had to buy another one. So I actually had two of them and both of them had gold legs.
And dude, I have a Darth Vader one too. And and it's one that he speaks. And I was wondering if he said the line, but I don't want to like open it and put batteries in it or anything.
I mean, it's one of those hard ones. It's like, it's worth the test, but at the same time, though, then you lose the resale value. But it's like, at the same time, though, that test might be worth it. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
Can I go into another one?
Absolutely. I'm kind of hoping that you might have some that I've never heard of before, so I'll kind of let you take the reins for a bit on some of these more popular pop culture Mandela effects.
How familiar are you with James Bond films?
As familiar as, I guess, any gentleman would be.
Okay. So let me give a little background to this. So
is this one of the newer ones or one of the classics? Let me throw that in there because I'm a big fan of the classics. That's my stuff. Like Moonraker was one of my favorites. Goldfinger was one of my favorites.
It's literally about Moonraker.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. But I want to give some background to this to show you. Okay, I'm just giving some background. Okay, so I had a family member that lived with us, and he was kind of like special. I don't really know what he was, but he was kind of like a kid. But he could go to work, he could drive, but he couldn't. He always lived with us, but he loved movies, and he had the craziest movie collection. He had bookshelf. He had 2 rooms. He had his bedroom, and we gave him a spare room, and he had every wall filled with bookshelves, and he had VHS, and he had every movie you could possibly think of, including every single Bond film. So I had seen Moonraker numerous times.
Dude, he'd be a perfect person to ask too, because I'm assuming that from his normal functionability, I'm assuming he probably had a little bit of socially awkwardness, but his obsessive compulsive with movies, for example, I'm assuming that he may have had some type of like autism. And usually people that have that photographic memory for their thing that's their obsession. So if you still have contact with this guy, he would be the one to ask about an exact detail of a movie, because I guarantee you he has all of it like line for line, scene for scene in his head.
Yeah, he passed in 2007. He was an old man.
Oh, God. Gotcha.
He was like my grandma's cousin. But we like always took care of him. But yeah, he was probably something like that.
The truth leaves with the previous generation, unfortunately.
Okay, so Moonraker, you know Moonraker. So the meeting between Dolly and Jaws, what do you remember that scene? Do you remember that scene?
Is that the one where the two end up like falling in love with each other?
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
You want me to just describe it, or okay, let me just ask the question. Here's the Mandela effect. What do you remember Dolly having? Didn't
she have like wasn't it like giant ears or something like that?
See, I always remember she had braces.
Maybe that's what it was. I remember that there was something that was like their whole thing where they bonded over. But it's been at least probably like, I'd say 7 years since I've seen that movie, unfortunately.
Exactly, Shane. That's why they bonded, because the braces, and Jaws had the screwed up like metal mouth and everything. And he smiled, and when she smiled, she had braces, and that was like their bonding connecting.
I remember that scene 100%. Yep.
Go look at that scene now. She has perfect white teeth, and them bonding doesn't make sense now. Like, she's just a pretty blonde girl now, where like she was a pretty blonde girl, but she had braces, which was the connecting part. And the funny thing is, Shane, there was a football YouTube channel. The guy's very knowledgeable in films, and he was talking about James Bond. I said, what a perfect time to ask him about Moonraker. Mandela effect was not brought up. We weren't talking about Mandela effect, but I do like to do that to get a genuine, memory of what somebody might have. We might not be talking about that, but there might be a Mandela effect in there that makes me think of that. And I'll ask the person. So I asked him, hey, what do you remember about in Moonraker with Dolly and Jaws? And he described the same thing. He said that she had braces and that was the connecting moment and this and this and that. And the dude had all these details and memories and knew all this stuff about Bond films. He was talking about other Bond films. So he knows all this stuff and memorizes all this stuff about Bond films, but he gets that wrong.
Yeah, that's like me with the Star Wars thing, man. It's like when it's your fandom, like the fucking movie. It's almost, I hate to compare it to like the religious stuff too, but it's just like when you spend that much time studying a film, studying a book, whatever, like it.
Now,
like those Star Wars ones are unchangeable in my mind because it's like I know what I saw as a kid and heard as a kid.
100%. 100%. Just like for me, the Isaiah 11:6 is unchangeable. I have too many anchor memories that confirm it for me. I'm sorry, my memory is just not fallible. Yeah, I have short-term memory loss. I might forget this or what I was going to do here and there, but I might not ride a bike for 20 years, but I can jump back on a bike and ride it just fine. I might be a little like, oh, I need to get the hang of it a little bit, but I can jump right back on and do it. I didn't just forget it. I didn't just like, oh man, how do I do this again? You for some reason that stays in your mind. There's memories, there's certain things that
it's subconscious.
Don't just exactly
because it's linked to a prolific memory in your own childhood.
Yeah. Now, I want to get into one that's very interesting to me, and it was a conversation between me and my grandpa, and it became like a personal Mandela effect for him. And it was very mind-blowing for him to the point where he couldn't sleep that night, really. And so we were talking about my grandpa was like into bodybuilding and weightlifting since like the 50s. That was like one of his favorite things. He started when he was like in the 8th grade. And in that time, like football teams didn't even lift weights. Like they used to make fun of him and stuff for lifting weights and stuff in high school. Now, a few years later, of course, that got adopted. But anyways, my grandpa loved body. He knew all the weightlifters and read all the magazines and seen the movies. And he taught me this too, because I started lifting when I was in 8th grade and I got into bodybuilding and researching all the bodybuilders and their routines and what it was my life for years. So me and him were talking about one of his favorite lifters, Bill Kazmaier. So Bill Kazmaier was a world's strongest man. He was in the NFL briefly, I think, like for the Packers and stuff like that. But he's mainly known for being a power lifter and winning World's Strongest Man. So my grandpa's like, man, he was in this movie. It was called Muscle Beach Party. He's like, I remember I was in high school, and he's like, I was talking to my buddy about it, and his buddy liked lifting weights too. And they were both talking about seeing him in the movie and this and that. And he's like, man, he's like, I wonder how old he was in that movie. So I go on IMDb and I start looking this up, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is when it gets really weird. So if you go on Wikipedia and you look up Bill Kazmaier, let's see here. I have. Okay, Bill Kazmaier, born December 30th, 1953. He's age 70. So Muscle Beach Party, right here on IMDb, he has a credit. He's credited, and they not only that, they have the picture of him on here. This movie had Don Rickles, and who was probably the biggest, and Frankie Avalon, and everybody else was basically like a weightlifter. It had Stevie Wonder and Dick Dale in it. But this movie came out in 1964, Shane. Again, Bill Kazmaier, he was born December 30th, 1953. So he would be 11 years old in this movie, Shane. And when you look at this, it's not an 11-year-old boy. This is a grown man. I'm actually going to screen share if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I can probably show some other ones too, some stuff we talked about earlier. Okay, so this is the movie here. Muscle Beach Party. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's such a bad name for a movie. Like, it sounds like some cheesy, like, really bad, low-budget movie, but it was probably a pretty popular movie back in the 50s, 60s, whenever you said that came out.
It's cheesy. Oh, it's cheesy. It's got some funny things in it, because it's got Buddy Hackett and Don Rickles, but it's kind of cheesy. So right here, that is Bill Kazmaier. So by the year he was born and the release of this movie, he would be 11 years old. Does that look like an 11-year-old boy?
Maybe if he took a lot of ate a lot of Wheaties, maybe.
And ate a whole bunch of Diana Ball and
hopped into a time machine for a little bit, and
to me, it's mind-blowing. There's another picture on IMDb. I tried saving it. It won't work. It goes to the link and what won't work. But here, actually, let's see if we can find it. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There's another right here. Is that looking like an 11-year-old boy? There's no way.
And yeah, no way in hell. That
There's
dude's
no
at
way.
least late 20s.
Exactly. Maybe 18. Maybe really good genetics in 18, but 11? Nah.
I guess people were built different back in the day, though. I was just judging off of, like, the...
People are built different,
Yeah,
but
people
there's
are built
no way
different.
an 11-year-old looked like that.
Oh, hell no. Yeah, that's beyond being built different.
Because for me studying bodybuilding and lifting, it takes years to develop tendon strength and tendon size and muscles. It just doesn't happen. Even taking steroids, like, it still takes a few years. But there was other things associated with this, right? So my grandpa's like, I remember talking to my buddy about it and everything. And then he said, Bill Kazmaier was down at the vitamin shop. So back then, strongmen and stuff had to be like entertainers, kind of. So they had to do different things. So they would blow up big water bottles, and they would bend bars and rip LA Times or the LA telephone book in half, or different things. Well,
Like sideshow attraction stuff.
Yeah, and one of his stunts, he would like swallow goldfish. And my grandpa remembers him doing that and him talking to his buddy in high school about that. Well, you can find Bill Kazmaier talking about that. Well, Bill Kazmaier didn't do the goldfish stunt now until the 70s, and my grandpa graduated in the 60s. He was, and he not only that, he graduated early. He graduated his junior year. So why does he remember talking to his friend about seeing Bill? It almost seems like the whole Bill Kazmaier's whole story, everything's like shifted a few years ahead.
Hey, and that's when it gets into that weird time shift theory with this thing.
Yeah. Very strange. It's so my grandpa remembers him doing the goldfish stunt. Well, that was done in the 70s. My grandpa, and then it's like his birthday. It's like if he was born like 4 or 5 years later, it would make sense. If he was 17, 18, okay, I could get it. But 11, there's no way.
Mm-mm. Yeah,
and it was interesting because I had told my grandpa about the Mandela effect before, and he would always try to he was very good at rationalizing stuff. That's why I like to talk to him about conspiracies and different weird stuff, because he would come up with like, well, did you think about this? Did you think about that? And I had showed him different Bible changes and different things, and nothing had really affected him until that night. And like I said, the conversation had nothing to do with Mandela effect, but it turned into that. Because when we found out how old he was and how the birth date, the discrepancy, it just didn't make sense.
Dude, just to throw in another personal one that I haven't heard anybody talk about, and maybe it's one of those things that nobody's really paid attention to or realized or anything, but Michigan at least. I remember when I was a kid, and even when my daughter was little, I would drive to the other side of the state to Holland, and the clocks would go back an hour. So a couple of years ago, we drove to the other side of the state, and I'm like, what the hell? That's weird. The clocks didn't go back. I'm like, they changed the time zones or something like that. So then I look into it, and I realized that Michigan, the Lower Peninsula, has always been one solid time zone. There's never been 1 hour back in the other side of the state. It doesn't hit until you hit like Indiana and stuff. So yeah, it was one of those weird ones. I didn't know how to really look into it to figure out more about it. It's one of those ones I've been wanting to ask people about if they remember there being 2 different time zones for the Lower Peninsula of Michigan. But I remember, again, the other side of the state, even see when my daughter was little, I was taking her to Holland, maybe 5 years ago, there being an hour back. And now 2 years ago when I went, I noticed that there isn't an hour back and that there's never been an hour back in Michigan on the Lower Peninsula. There's 2 counties in the UP that go an hour back, and that's it. Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
See, I have something similar with California, but it's not to the point where I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to say it's a Mandela effect. But I swear, the West Coast was only... Because I'm in Mountain Time Zone, and I swear California, it's 2 hours now, right?
Should be... There's Eastern, then there's Central, then there's Mountain, and then there's Pacific. So from where I'm at, it's 3 hours back. From Mountain Time where you're at, it should only be 1 hour back.
Okay, so California's only 1 hour back.
From you, yes. But then you're 2 hours back from me.
I remember it being 2 hours back. But now it's 1 hour back. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I could swear to you it was 2 hours forever, because I've had family that have lived in California forever.
Just to possibly confirm it, maybe they did change lines at some point. So, I mean, definitely worth checking out to see if timelines have changed. But if not, that's another one of those weird ones that it's just, maybe there was something weird to it. If we're getting into the whole idea of dimensions possibly shifting through, I feel like time would definitely play a huge factor in it. But time is one of those ones that I feel like would squeak past people more unnoticed than other things, because people look at a clock and it's not the right time and they just go, whatever, okay, it's 1:30, and they just go about their day and they don't really put too much thought into it.
I got to get into, I want to do a kind of a personal one, and then I want to do a geography one. So one of the personal ones, so I buy food for restaurants and stuff. And one of the places I buy food at, the end cap has avocados, right? And forever I would buy the avocados and buy them. And then one day I noticed the label, the avocado was different. Now, what do you remember? I don't know how familiar you are with avocados or what, but do you know of the most famous brand of avocados, basically how you would spell it?
It's the avocados from Mexico, right? It's Avocado.
Not avocado, but the type.
Like the brand of avocado?
You want me to just give it away?
Yeah, because I just remember the Mexican avocados.
So Haas avocado. HASS avocado. It's the type of avocado. Well, it was originally Haas avocados, HAAS. And when I would buy them at the store, the label was HAAS. And then around I would say probably 2017, one day I go into that store, and mind you, I would go in every day. Now I might not buy avocados every day or every week, but one day it was different and it had changed to HASS. And I was just like, maybe it's just a different kind. like a Gala and a Granny Smith apple and a Fuji apple. I just thought maybe it's a different kind. Didn't think much of it until I started seeing Mandela effect videos, and they're like, it's changed. Haas has never existed. I'm like, what? Haas has never existed? The signs were right there. Well, guess what? You won't find it. But there is some evidence of it still, even though that avocado has never existed. So there's a channel. I have a picture of him showing he has a physical bag of it, spelled how I remember it originally. And then I found like a website version of the same bag that spells it, but then in the actual description on the website, it let's see here. So do you see the screen?
Yeah.
Right here. Do you see how it's spelled on that bag?
HAAS.
Yeah, so he has the physical bag, right? Well, look. Look, so on the bag, HAAS, but then if you look at the actual description, it's an HASS avocado. And mind you, the HAAS has never existed, and the name that the guy that it's named after is spelled HASS.
That's a weird one. I've never heard of that one before. I've never been too familiar with avocados, but Private Select, what store is that from?
Like King Soopers or Kroger's, or I don't know what other ones around the
I thought that was like a store brand or something like that. For maybe it is
a store
Kroger
brand.
Yeah, for Kroger.
Yeah,
so I mean,
yeah, for Kroger.
You have to throw. I'm sure a lot of people throw in the whole idea about typos, but again, it's one of those things that a typo only exists on one bag. Why would everybody have previous memories beyond that bag?
Yeah, exactly. And see, I didn't really know anything about avocados before I worked for this place until I started buying avocados all the time. And yeah, very, very weird. Very weird. So a geography one. Okay, so, and I have, let's see, let me make sure I have a picture kind of how I remember it. Yes, that's it. Perfect. I don't know who made that, but okay. Okay, so when you're looking, I got to try to describe this in a good way. Okay, so it's not just name brands, it's not just things like that. Geography, there's geography changes, there's history changes, there's vocabulary changes, there's anatomy changes to the body. So this geography change. See, so I remember, how do you remember North America? So you're looking at North America. Now, in relation to North America, where would South America be? Like, would it be like over here? Like, would Brazil be like on the west coast of California, or like would Brazil be on the west coast of New York, or would it be kind of more like in the middle? Or
I kind of remember it. I remember being more shifted to the east.
Okay.
Where I don't know exactly where it would
much?
fall down below, but I remember it being like the United States above it, and then it kind of tails down into Central America, and then it tips back out towards the Atlantic Ocean.
But it's okay. So do you remember it being like just kind of like a little bit over?
I remember it being more of like I don't want to say a C shape, but kind of like crescent out towards the Atlantic Ocean. I don't want to say like super drastically, but just I remember it being more shifted over. Like it wasn't like straight down. It was more like straight, and then when you get into South America, it curves more to the east.
Yeah. So forget Central America, but think, let's say the west coast of South America. Where would it be in relation to North America? So let's say the west coast of South America, would it be
probably like mid-United States? That's kind of
okay.
I'd say probably
so
around that area.
Okay, so my memory of it, I always remember South America. So it was North America, and then it was it was a little bit to the east. So like the west coast of South America would be like where Texas is, or like a little bit past Baja, Mexico, or
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm describing it.
yeah, so kind of like this. So
Yeah.
that's how I kind of remember it.
Yep.
Well, if you look it up now, in the way it's always been, the West Coast here is like way over here, or you know that I think about it. That's actually how it is now. I think because I remember it over a little bit to the west more. I don't remember Brazil being way over here in the time zone of New York. I felt like Brazil would be like in the time zone like here, like North Carolina.
Brazil is at least a couple hundred
Florida.
miles farther past New England.
Exact. Yeah. And I feel like it. From what I remember, it was like you said, like 200 miles to the west, maybe 300 miles.
Yeah, I don't remember it being that far out. I remember it being still to that direction, but I'd say a bit more straight down. I don't remember the tip of Brazil going out that far.
Exactly. And what also happened is the tip here of Central America, I remember it connecting over here. So that changed. And then not only that, how do you remember the Panama Canal flowing? Do you have a memory of what direction the Panama Canal flowed?
Doesn't it flow from east to west?
That's what I always remember. It went east to west. Well, now if you look it up, it's more like northwest, southeast. And see, and I have a memory when I was a kid looking up Disney cruises because I wanted to go on a Disney cruise, and my grandma was like, "Well, look up which ones." And they had a Panama Canal cruise, and I remember looking at the map, and it showed it east-west. It was east-west, and it showed you the different locks and the different stops you'd go through. Well, now the Panama Canal is like this and not like this.
So you're not able to go through it like that through cruises?
You can still go through it. It's just the direction has changed from what I remember now.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that one. I've never been on a cruise, and I haven't really looked into too much for cruises, so I can't really give too much of an opinion on that one, at least.
Yeah, see, that one, I 100% remember seeing that. Yeah, I 100% remember looking at the maps and everything, and it showed each town it would stop in through. It was like through Panama and all that, because the Panama Canal. Yeah, very weird. How about let's do Pikachu. So do you have a memory of what Pikachu's tail looked like at all, Shane?
Yes, we were talking about this a little bit before the show, and we both, ironically, have shirts of us as kids wearing Pikachu shirts. And I personally remember a black tip to the tail, and then we were kind of going back and forth a little bit with where the brown may have been on the tail.
Exactly. Yeah, see, I remember a black tip on the tail too. And I remember that because when I was a kid, I would draw and trace different things, especially Pokemon. I loved Pokemon. And there's a specific night I remember drawing Pikachu and putting a black tip on his tail. And I had a stuffed animal that I got from Elitch Gardens, the amusement park. Well, let me show you a picture of me as a kid, the same time, and me when I would draw Pokemon and all that. It has Pikachu on the shirt. See, if you look right here on the shoulder, Pikachu has no black tip on his tail, even though this is the same time period that I would draw him, and I remember drawing the black tip. But now he has a little brown area on the base of the tail now. And this See, I have a memory, right, of me drawing it and everything. I remember the day distinctly. I remember drawing the black tip. I remember the stuffed animal. But look, here's a picture of me with a Pikachu in that time period with no black tip on the tail. So,
see, my memory comes down to like when it was super popular, the Pokemon movie was coming out and shit. They put like the Pikachu tail on like everything as like a promotional thing. Like I remember there was that even when like that Pikachu specific Game Boy game came out, that it had some like extended thing where it had like a Pikachu tail and shit on it, and it had the black tip on the tail.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it would have almost just like looked funky to do that as a design if it was just like a lightning bolt tail, but it was all yellow with like a brown base. Like it would have looked weird, you know?
Yeah, it would have looked weird. It looks weird now when I see that, like especially a picture of me as a kid with it changed. Like that's weird because I remember in that same time period drawing him. It was within a year or two of me taking that picture.
And I mean, just to confirm, because we were talking about it a little bit before the show, when I looked up that old picture of me as a kid holding my snake wearing a Pikachu shirt, brown base, all yellow tip, no black.
Yeah, all yellow tip.
So 2 pictures confirmed from the 90s.
And probably a month ago, I asked this guy that I deliver to. He's like a Pokemon card, like he like collects them and sells them and everything. I asked him, and he says, "No, he had a black tip on his tail." He was like, "No, 100%."
The Japanese are just trolling us. They just decided to do the first generation all black, and then after that, they were just like, let's just mess with their heads. Everything's yellow now with a brown base. Delete all the evidence.
You know, I think like the Raichu. I think that, which is like the evolved version of Pikachu. I think he still has the black tip.
Which would make it even weirder. Because then it's like,
I mean, look,
people are going to throw in the idea about like crossed memories, but at the same time, though, it's like Raichu wasn't the popular one, so why would anybody have associated the black tail right off the bat with Pikachu?
No, it's all yellow too.
Oh, yeah, so see, regardless. Because I remember Pikachu being yellow and black, and I remember Raichu being brown and yellow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more like a brown, like a darker brown.
Because he had the markings on his body that were like the brown. So like I said, Pikachu was black and yellow, and then Raichu was brown and yellow.
Yeah, exactly.
With the teeth and shit.
Man. Yeah, I'm telling you, this is a very weird. You're probably not too into sports or were ever into any sports, were you?
I played hockey and stuff like that, but I was never like a sports fan where I like tracked or followed teams or players or anything like that.
Do you remember like what the Heisman pose was?
No.
You don't remember the Heisman pose? See, I remember the Heisman pose always being like the old football player, and they got the knee up and they're doing like you see pictures of like football players from the 50s and early 60s, and they're like doing this, like they're like
the half run thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The half run thing with the leg up. Well, that was like always the Heisman thing with the leg up. Well, the Heisman, it doesn't look like that now. Now both feet are on the ground. So it let's see if I think I have a couple pictures of it. I'm going to share. Well, that won't work. This is the only one, I guess. Well, here's O.J. Simpson doing the leg up.
Out of anybody it could be, why would it not be O.J. Simpson?
Yeah. And there's another picture. It's like a guy from Michigan. I can't remember what player. And it shows him with the leg like way up. And they say that's what you're remembering as the Heisman. But if you look at the trophy now, there's both feet are planted and he's kind of doing the same direction thing, but that's never what it was. The trophy had the leg up, and it's not that way now.
I got to ask, while we're not necessarily on sports, but just for the sake of it, because there's got to be something with the reason why you got a Richard Simmons picture in that folder. What's the Mandela effect for Richard Simmons? I'm curious.
Okay, Richard Simmons. So I remember Richard Simmons.
He was the straightest man alive, right?
He always had a headband.
You can't even fake that Mandela effect.
No, you can't fake that one.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. And we are back, so let's hop right in.
No, but I always remember him having a headband, and he's never wore one. But you can find numerous people like dressing up as Richard Simmons with the headband and this, but never wore one. So
see, I remember the fro with the headband because my grandma used to watch those fucking workout videos when I was a kid. And I remember how goofy it looked because it was just like one of the most 80s looking things I'd ever seen as a kid. Like,
dude, it was 100%. The headband was ridiculous. I remember the headband.
It was under the fro. It was part of the fro.
Part of the fro. There was a family costume party we had like in the early 2000s. And I remembered a picture of one of my family members dressing up as him. I'm like, oh, I got to find that picture. Try to find it. Well, I found the picture. And what's interesting is a lot of the times, like, let's say like somebody dressing up as Richard Simmons, right? They'll have the headband. Like, let's say they remember it, right? And they had the headband, but like he never had one. But my relative, I remember at the costume party had the headband as a part of it. When I found the picture, the headband is not on. There's no headband, but they're wearing wristbands. I'm going to show you. So there's Richard Simmons. See, no headband. Always had the headband. But here's my family member. Look.
No headband.
No headbands.
What a weird combination of people there. I just want to throw that out. You got Han Solo, Richard Simmons, and Elvis Presley.
Yes. And I remember the headband. I dressed as a Native American. I remember the day. I remember going there. I remember going to the store and I sat in the basket to the grocery store and people were staring at me because I had like the whole get up, the buckskin and everything, like the headdress and everything. And he had the headband. It was a red headband. But no, and I remember seeing this picture with him having the headband and he no longer is wearing it. Just like Richard Simmons.
That just makes it even weirder.
And isn't that interesting though that there was somebody wearing a Star Wars character, Han Solo, in there. I found that kind of like, just so happens to be a Star Wars character, huh?
Too bad you didn't find a Mandela effect for Elvis. Otherwise, you could have touched all three bases in that one picture.
I know, right? There might be. I think there is an Elvis one, but I can't think of it.
Oh, I can almost guarantee you there's an Elvis one.
Yeah, I can't think of it. I remember hearing something about Elvis though. But so a sports one for me. So me personally, I get it. A lot of people think football's stupid and rigged and blah blah blah. I don't know. I still follow it. I've always followed the Raiders. My family member, she was a big Raider fan that died, and I just kind of keep it going for her. I still kind of pay attention to it, even though it irritates me sometimes. But anyway, so the Raiders, their logo. Me personally, I feel the eye patch has changed. But the thing is that I've seen their logo and stuff so much that I'm not 100% sure, if that makes sense. Like, I don't want to go out and just 100% say it's a Mandela effect, but when I look at it, it doesn't seem right when I stare at it. And I have an example of what I remember it. So that won't load. Oh, of course that won't load. Let's see here. I can do it another way, Shane. Let's see here. Got where's that? Here we go. Okay, so the way it's mirrored right now, the patch on this side, is how I remembered it. But the patch has always been on this opposite side. So when you actually look at it, it's on the other eye. And when I look at it, I could swear to you that it was on the other eye. But like I said, I've seen it so much because I see so much Raider stuff all the time that I'm not 100% sure on it.
I'm sure there's a lot of like little critiques with like logos and stuff like that it's like people don't catch it because it's something like so small and simple that they don't like question it. They're just like, oh, okay, but move on to the next thing. It's not something like big enough that somebody just sits there one day like, why is the logo totally different?
Yeah, like Kit Kat, like
with the dash in the middle.
Yeah, Kit Kat had the dash.
Fruit of the Loom with the what's it called? With the
cornucopia.
Cornucopia. Yep, I remember it having the cornucopia when I was a kid because I used to wear the tighty whities.
Yep, 100%. I wore the tighty whities. I even had Pokemon Pikachu ones with, for some reason, they put Pikachu on the crotch or in the Pokemon. But it was Fruit of the Loom and it had a cornucopia. And my grandpa, I remember pulling out one of his like undershirts out of his drawer when I was a kid. It was Fruit of the Loom and it had the cornucopia on the tag.
See, it doesn't make sense without the cornucopia. It's just a pile of fruit. Fruit of the Loom.
And they say we're just misremembering it and we're mistaking it with this album. Let me show you what album they say we're mistaking it with. I'm sure you've never ever heard of this album. Have you heard of that album?
Hell no.
Flute of the Loom. That's what we're actually mistaking it for, because we've seen that album so many times.
Yeah, definitely not. I've never seen that in my entire life.
Now another question. Why would the artist
call it Flute of the Loom unless he's parodying Fruit of the Loom?
Flute of the Loom, parroting it, and then the horn is like parroting the cornucopia. I think I have.
It's kind of weird when these Mandela effects don't exist, but yet there's parodies of them in other places existing how we remember them existing.
And then see somebody obviously photoshopped that and made it. Yeah, that's how it's always been, but that's how I do remember it.
The cornucopia looked different, but yes, it definitely had a cornucopia.
Exactly.
And I guess before we start kind of wrapping stuff up, is there any other ones that you want to throw at the audience?
Let me see here. See what I got. I got some notes. Yeah, let me do a couple little interesting ones. I'll do a anatomy one. So, Shane, have you ever paid attention or done boxing or MMA or?
Yeah, I used to box actually.
Okay, so are you familiar with the kidney punch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you remember where are the kidneys located? Where do you remember?
In the back. It's like from the back, but it's kind of off to the side, but more towards the back.
Yeah, and it's like down here, lower, not protected, because that's why if you punch somebody with a kidney punch, it's illegal because it can damage and hurt them. Well, the kidneys are no longer where we think they are. They're now up higher and now protected by the rib cage.
Wait, what?
Yes. Yeah, and a crazy thing, I remember my grandpa showing me, like, he would teach me how to fight and do little street fight things, and I remember him teaching me specific, like, little kidney punch things and different.
Punch him in the kidney and they'll piss blood. I remember always hearing that one. If it's protected by the rib cage, how the hell are you pissing blood with it if you get hit in the kidney?
That's exactly what he always said too. Yeah, they would piss blood.
Yeah, so it's like it doesn't make sense in any other context, because what other internal organ would you hit that would cause me to piss blood besides the kidney or the liver maybe?
But what's interesting is like, okay, so we remember that or whatever, it changed, right? Let's say it changed from where we remember it to now. So let's say a surgeon, right? That surgeon, so do they just wake up the next day and they're automatically updated on like where the kidneys are and how to do the surgery, and all their schooling they went through is all updated in their mind? Does that make sense?
All the doctors came from a parallel dimension. That's what happened.
I just like my thing is I don't see a doctor opening up somebody and being like, "Oh, the kidneys aren't there." Like they're gonna know where the kidney.
Cut a little bit higher. I think we missed it. We got to go a little bit higher.
Yeah, yeah. There's the other ones like the heart. Like I remember the heart being over here, but it's here. It's always been in the middle. And I do remember being taught that later, but I do remember like in elementary always being taught it was over here. And then I do remember learning later it was in the middle, but a lot of people say that's a Mandela. Okay, so I got an interesting one that kind of is mind blowing. So Procter and Gamble, do you kind of remember how Procter was spelled or no?
Proctor.
That's what I remember. You said PROC what?
TOR.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember. Well, Procter and Gamble Procter has always been spelled PROCTER. Procter and Gamble, and the name of the family that it's named after is changed to PROCTER. But I have right here. Oh, let's screen share actually. This is literal copyright of it being spelled the old way. But like I said, Shane, the family that Procter's named after is spelled with an ER. Well, look at this. Here's a trademark with OR. You see that right here?
Yeah, PROCTOR.
Yeah, and this is trademark. You can look that up. And you can look at the dates and everything. And then if you actually look it up, it does change later. Like if you look at later copyrights, the name is changed. Now, why is that significant? Well, because when you file for copyrights and stuff, that stuff's got to be, the paperwork's got to be right. The name's got to be right. All this stuff has to match and everything. I mean, this is important documentation, right? Because let's say it's ER or OR. Well, then somebody can trademark ER.
Yep. I mean, more often than not, that's why, like, a lot of the times when big companies trademark shit like that, they'll trademark both so that somebody can't even use something that's close to theirs.
But to me, what that shows, because you can find the other trademark later where it's spelled ER, to me, that kind of shows where there was a change. Like,
Did it say, what year was it? Does it say offhand on there?
let me look again. 91.
So that was
to Examiner
before the CERN stuff then. It would have been really weird if it was like the first year they kicked up CERN, if that would have changed.
Exactly. But the thing is, I think there's people that remember it changing around 2016.
So then the past documentation got changed. See, that's where it gets in weird, is that it's like, there's definitely a possibility that they purposely change shit just to see if they are able to change history and records of things. But then when you get into this stuff where it's like you have a physical copy of like you wearing a shirt or something like that, it's like that shit can't be changed. Stuff on the internet, yeah, you can easily change that shit to try to control a narrative just to see what you can get away with before people notice. But how do you change old photos that have been in a photo album for 30 years?
I know, right?
Or a Freemason Bible that was printed in 1924.
Or the book Bible that I got that changed in a couple months. Or if you go find a Bible from the 1700s, it's going to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not like it's just somebody went on the internet and changed it. Like it's physical stuff's changing as well.
Yep.
And if you ever want to do another episode on this, there's plenty of other stuff we can talk about because there's history events I could talk about. There's World War II events, World War One, all kinds of crazy stuff.
Dude, I'd definitely be down to do another episode. Definitely going back to this, we can bring it up as a part 2 because I know that with at least Red Circle, if I go over 2.5 hours, I got to compress the sound quality down, which I don't prefer to do. So I know if we open up that can of worms, it's going to be another 2 hours. So we'll just use it as a bookmark to have a means or have a reason to get back together to do another show. So we'll make sure we schedule that one up and do a part 2 as far as the Mandela effect goes. Because by then, man, there might even be more stuff that's popped up since they kicked up CERN recently.
That's what I was going to say.
I'm just sitting back and waiting for people to notice stuff.
Ever evolving topic.
We will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And we are back, so let's hop right in. So I guess kind of wrapping up with it, I always like to do words of wisdom at the end to kind of leave things on a high note. Not that this has been like a dark show or anything, but if there was any words of wisdom that you could leave the listeners with, what might it be for the third time, man?
You know, my words of wisdom for this would be personally, I would say pay attention to your surroundings, pay attention to things around you, look at logos, look at scriptures, look at stuff around you. So maybe if something does change, you'll notice it, and it's not just, oh, did that change or not? I would say maybe open your awareness and pay attention to your surroundings more.
Some great words of wisdom, regardless, even beyond Mandela effects, all of that. Just be aware of your surroundings. That's like something that I feel like a lot of people nowadays have lost touch with. And it gets to the point of being like baffling, man, that like I'll be working with people and they won't notice stuff right in front of them, where it's like people need to learn how to be aware of their surroundings, even for their own safety, man. But maybe that's the problem, is that society has gotten to a point where people don't feel like they have to look over their shoulder all the time like you would have had to back in the day. Or I don't want to say back in the day, but like back when we were like out in the wild, like when we were settlers and we were doing all of this, like you never know what animal could be around you. So now it's just like you're in the city, there's police around you. Like people have lost that touch with observation because they just are like, I'm in a public place with a lot of people. Nothing's going to happen. There's police around. That's that. Boom. And again, self-awareness is an extremely important thing because people don't realize like how many emotional cues you can pick up on people. Like even just with like a basic understanding of psychology, it's all about observation. So in turn, once you learn how to observe and you understand the art of observation, you can read people without them even saying a word. And that goes a long way with a lot of people, because that may be the opportunity where you don't say that thing you thought you were going to say because you're able to read what somebody's putting off before you even go to say what you're going to say.
Well, and I feel that if you pay attention to everything that's going around you, you're not gonna, I don't know, you're not, you can't be fooled or anything as much. Like you're, I don't know, you'll notice a lot more. Not only that, I find that my personal experiences are more trustworthy than looking up something on Wikipedia or looking up something on the internet.
Ain't that the truth? And I guess kind of leading into the links and everything, I know that we were talking about you starting up your show in the beginning. I know you've been talking about it for a little while, but it's just still a matter of being in the works and everything like that. So we can't unfortunately drop those links. But if anybody's interested in having you on as a guest, or if somebody wanted to follow your pages for when your podcast pops up, or if somebody just thinks you're an interesting guy and wants to have a conversation with you, where can everybody come and find you on the internet, at least for now, and possibly leading into being able to find your show in the future?
Well, the show's going to be called Thrash Talk. There's no pages or anything. I'd have created them, but I wouldn't follow them yet. But follow me on Instagram. That's really the only social media I use. And it's Mosh, MOSH, Thrash, which is THRASH. It's all one word. And that's it.
Well, of course, I will make sure all of your link is included down in the show description. And I appreciate you making the time to come on for the third time, man. I'm looking forward to the fourth. And you're going to be one of those people that, I mean, you're already been a reoccurring guest 3 times. So, of course, it's going to continue on in the future because you're always diving into some new stuff. You're always bringing some new information. So, I appreciate you coming on the show and looking forward to next time, man.
Yeah, saying I got some stuff in the works in my local area. So, look out for that too. There's going to be some interesting stuff coming.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. If you guys enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a review or rating for the show on iTunes or Spotify. If you guys leave a 5-star review on iTunes, then I will read on the show and give you guys a big shout out. And you guys can also share this particular episode or the show as a whole if you think somebody might enjoy it with a friend, with a coworker, whoever you want to share it with. And those are going to be the 2 best ways to help the show organically grow. And if you guys are willing to do that kind of stuff, if I entertain you guys on a weekly basis and you guys think I deserve it, I would greatly appreciate if you guys could help me out. And that means expand the show out and make it so the community gets a little bit bigger. I got even more of you guys to interact with, and it's beneficial on all ends. And I appreciate you guys for doing it. Appreciate you guys for listening. And again, I can't say it enough. I wouldn't be doing any of this stuff without you guys. And if anybody wants to get a hold of me for any other reason whatsoever, be it that you want to share some fan art, you want to simply have a conversation, you want to be a guest on the show, you want to have me as a guest on your show, or you're interested in sponsoring the show, you guys can get a hold of me through email, which is increaseourrealitypodcasts@outlook.com, or you guys can get a hold of me through social media. Instagram is the one that I'm the most active on, but Facebook is always definitely a viable option also. Or you guys can go to the link tree and there are specific submission forms. Make sure you guys click on the right one because one is to report an encounter, which I definitely recommend doing also. And every single thing that I've mentioned is all available on the link tree, which is available down in the show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation and I'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.